Hello and welcome to episode 2 of my podcast. My name is Nettee and this podcast is called This Too Is Healing. And today I've got 2 guests with me. I've got lovely Jen and lovely Lauren.
Hey.
And we're going to continue the conversation today. And we're going to talk about our books, our favourite books that have helped us or have been turning points for us through our lives. So I thought I would go for this today because I do get a lot of people asking me, what books do you read, Nettee? What do you do? What shall I do? What book shall I get? And it's interesting because I don't read physical books. I always listen to audiobooks. And I'm going to tell you a little secret. So when I left school, when I left secondary school, I could not read or write. I was one of those children that kind of got left behind in the education system. Even though I went to a boarding school, I went to a private school. That school, their emphasis was on dancing. So I was trained to be a ballet dancer. That was what they wanted me to be at that time. So all my education was through dancing. So I could show you a good dance. I could do a tap dance for you, or I knew what all the ballets were. But I couldn't write hardly at all, and I didn't read. But what I did do was I did journal in my own way. I used to do writing every day. I kept a little dear diary at school that used to help me just process things. Being in a boarding school in the 80s was a very stressful place to be. It was very different to what it is nowadays, I would hope anyways. So moving my life forward, of course, books were never a thing for me. I'd never read a whole book in my life. And then I wanted to be a teacher, a primary school teacher. So I had to go to university. And then, of course, I had to do some reading and I had to do some writing. So I had to learn really quickly. So I found that because I wasn't that good and fast at writing and probably undiagnosed dyslexia, I listened to audiobooks. I found that was the best way that I could sort of hear and process the whole book. And that was the first time when I listened to audiobooks, was the first time that I ever listened to a book from start to finish. And until that point, I'd never finished a book. So audiobooks was the way for me. But obviously some people are really good at reading, really enjoy reading physical books. And now as I've got on and I've got older and I've practiced a lot of reading, I now do have physical books. Generally, I listen to an audiobook, and if I really like that audiobook and I want to go deeper into that book because there's lots of teaching within it, then I will buy the physical book and then I will read the book as well. So let's start with Lauren this time. And Lauren, so I asked you to bring 3 books you wanted to chat to about that maybe that you really enjoyed, that were turning points for you, etc. So tell us about your books.
Thank you. Yeah, I loved this question, by the way. I've always loved reading, and I suppose when I maybe was coming into my early 20s and started reading more sort of non-fiction, what you might call kind of self-help or healing books. I could collect books. I absolutely love them. So I love you for bringing this topic to us.
Brilliant.
It was actually it was a hard pick because there was quite a few to choose from, but this one was easy. So this is actually the sequel to the book I was looking for, but I think I've lent the original to someone, which is the other thing I do a lot. But it's by Michael Singer, and it's the book I was looking for on my bookshelf is called The Untethered Soul. My friend recommended it to me probably 15 years ago, let's say. And it's a book which is really about the kind of internal narrator that we all have, our monkey mind, some people would call it, that sort of voice inside your head or your inner critic. It has lots of names. But I remember picking up the book, and I think I just had never really realised at that point in my life that was a thing, that was a part of me and a part of my sort of psyche. And I had this holy shit moment in the first couple of chapters of thinking, oh no, this is a thing, and it's clearly a thing for everybody because it's being written about here in this book. And I think what it led to over the course of those pages, and then, oh gosh, all my interest in like meditation and breath work that's come as partly as a result of it actually, is that we have a choice. We don't always have to listen to the voice inside our head and the things it's saying. And he has this amazing analogy in the book, which is, if you imagine that voice was like a roommate, your inner roommate, he actually calls it, or a friend, you would quickly realize that friend was quite critical, was quite cruel sometimes, that was definitely over analytical and not forgiving, and and had a really skewed perception of you, and was really not to be trusted and taken so literally all the time. And I remember reading it and thinking, yeah, this really chimes with my experience of being alive. Actually, that voice is quite often pointing out challenges or things that I could have done better, or worrying about something that might happen in the future. And actually, I have a choice with how to relate to that voice. Like she's a part of me. The voice inside my head speaks in my own voice, and she's a part of me, but actually she isn't the whole me. And the fact that I can take the perspective of the kind of the watcher or the observer of that voice and my thoughts means that they can't be the entirety of me. And that was like an enormous light bulb moment for me.
I totally get what you mean, because it was revolutionary to me when I read books like that, and I realised that I had control over what I thought, that the continuous chatter that we have going on in our brains, that we have control over that, that actually we can choose different. We can choose to think something different. It's our choice, and that we've got control over that. Because I think when we go back to people that have, severe anxiety or depression, you're so enveloped within that feeling or those thoughts that you don't think that you can change those thoughts. You've got no control over it at all. And that's often how people say to me when they're talking to me about their mental health problems, is they feel that they've got no control over it at all. And books like this, I completely agree. Like, oh my goodness, I can actually change that thought. I have control. I can stop that thought, and I can choose a different thought.
Yeah.
Sometimes you've got more energy and whereabouts with you to do that. Yeah. Like we talked about in the last episode, sometimes that just doesn't happen, and we just got to go with that. But we can actually stop those thoughts. So that's I've heard of that. I haven't actually listened to that book yet. That's kind of in I've got a little bank of things that I want to listen to, but that's definitely one that I wanted to listen to.
And it's also this thing about just even being aware that that's what's happening inside your own mind. Yeah. And that it doesn't, if my inner thoughts are saying, oh, you did really, I don't know, you were crap on that podcast later today. Like, oh, there's loads of things you could have said, Lauren, you didn't. Actually, I don't have to believe it. Yeah. I can rationally understand that, there's a reason. It's kind of my ego. It's that egoic part of my mind that's trying to protect me and do right by me, even though it's quite annoying and sometimes counterintuitive to that, because it'll make you feel a bit crap. So I found it like just a really empowering read. And I think my experience since then has been that even having some awareness of the fact that we all have this voice, and that's quite often how it behaves for all of us, is sometimes also enough just to curb the intensity out of it. Sometimes you can just watch it happening.
Yeah, like you say, be the observer. That was another revolutionary insight for me, of knowing that we are the observer. So I love that. Yeah. Okay, move on to your second one.
My second book is called When the Body Says No. This is Gabor Mate, who I first came across when I was working, for the stint that I lived in London. I was working in prisons, and I was supporting people who were trying to address their drug and alcohol use before they got released from custody. And he wrote an amazing book called In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts, and it's all about addiction, which is kind of what he was. He was kind of an addiction specialist and medic and physician in Canada. But this book he wrote is really about, it's called The Hidden Cost of Stress. It's, for me, an amazing book, which is about the mind-body connection, which is something you mentioned earlier in our last episode. And it's like an exploration of the fact that if we live in a certain way, particularly if we live with lots of stress, or maybe we're a person that doesn't have very many boundaries and we're always putting everybody else before us, our needs come last. We perhaps live feeling a lot of resentment towards other people, or without kind of much autonomy, or without being able to speak our own voice, make our own choices. Actually, that has a very literal impact on your body and on your nervous system. And this book goes through lots of different, like ailments and diseases, from breast cancer, which my mum had, and lots of other kind of ALS, lots of other autoimmune diseases as well, and talks about how there's a very common personality type at the root of a lot of those conditions. And when my mum had breast cancer, I remember her going to see at one point she was treated by the NHS, but she went to see a private oncologist, and they said it is highly likely that the different kind of traumatic experiences she'd had as a child, and the stresses that she'd had, and her inability to manage them at the time, had possibly led to kind of hormone shifts and bodily responses that had contributed to her getting breast cancer. So when I read the breast cancer chapter, I was like, phew, it's just massively hits home. And again, is immensely empowering. You know, if you can find ways of healthily expressing things like anger, frustration, disappointment, all of those things which are really normal and right to feel as a human being. But if you suppress them, it does lead to physical illness.
Yeah.
And so I think he speaks about it amazingly in this book, and I had my jaw on the floor for a lot of it. There's some really cool research in here. Yeah, just about commonalities between people getting specific diseases and stuff.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, third book.
This is not a book about healing, but I wanted to pick this because it's probably my favourite non-fiction book. So it's called Shantaram. It's a fairly well-known book, and I won't go into the plot because, as you can see, it's a very long book.
That is like a doorway.
But it's an adventure story. It's an amazing and kind of not typical love story in there. There's kind of gangsters and crime lords and travel to lots of different places across the world. There's an escape from prison. But this book, it was given to me by he's now my husband, but we'd probably been together only a few months at that time. And I went off traveling, and my sister came out partway through, and he sent this book out with her for me to read. And it had some photos of like our early dates in the pages and like a lovely little note in it. And I had come off the back, before meeting my husband and kind of our relationship starting, of a really long and kind of shitty relationship, which left me feeling really, I just had no self-confidence. I didn't really feel that I was good enough for anybody, and I'd been really disrespected for a long period of time, and I guess my self-worth had been hugely depleted by that. And that was sort of through my teens and kind of partly into my early 20s. And I read this while I was finishing up my travels, and I remember getting it and just thinking, wow, this is what it feels like to be kind of loved and respected by somebody.
That's so lovely.
And then it's a magical story, and it's also his favourite book. And there's a really amazing quote. It's our favourite quote from the book. And it's, sometimes you have to give in to win. And it's this thing of like, sometimes you have to just surrender to what's in front of you and what life is throwing at you. And actually that's your way through this, what feels like this mess. Sometimes is surrender. And that's like my big takeaway from the book.
Oh, thank you, Lauren. That's so lovely. Thank you for
sharing.
sharing
Tom, my
that.
husband. Fucking legend.
I love that. Okay, over to you, Jen.
Yeah. So again, this was I read a lot. And definitely, I think it was early 2020 when I was going through a bit of a traumatic experience, and I ended up bedbound for a few weeks. I was in quite a low place, and I then became obsessed with buying books because that's all I could do was read. And again, a lot of self-help, self-healing, self-care, all of that good stuff. And these three books they're quite easy reads. Then there's nothing too extravagant about these, but I just loved them. So the first one was Good Vibes, Good Life by Vex King, who I absolutely adore. You know, on his Instagram pages and stuff, he's always posting really meaningful and powerful quotes and reminders to people all about self-care, well-being, that kind of thing. And that's kind of my first introduction to him, was through this book. And he talks a bit about his experience kind of growing up. He didn't have much growing up, living in out of what I call sort of like hostels, I guess. He didn't have a great childhood experience, to kind of where he is now. It's completely so different, so vastly different. And this book really talks about kind of a lot about self-care and kind of having all the different tools and how to prioritize moments for yourself and how to overcome kind of toxic, you know, energy and things like that, and how to, well, he talks quite a bit about manifestation, but kind of how to better your life. And it gives you all these little tools and things within this book, and it's it's great. It's a fantastic little book. So that's my first one.
Number one. Lovely. I love that. Another one I need to read or listen to.
This one is, again, it's just a really nice, easy read, but this is by Fern Cotton, who I adore. I love all her books. I've got every single one. I collect all books. But this one is called Quiet. And this one is what you were kind of talking about earlier. It's about silencing the noise inside your head. And she's very open in terms of her struggles with like anxiety and overthinking and all of her experiences being in the limelight and all of these things. And she gives you a lot of practical kind of tools and tips. And she also interviews different people at different stages to get their version and ideas of how to manage, you know, your thoughts, your intrusive thoughts and things like that as well. And it's just a fantastic little book, and it really does. It gives you like little life lessons, and it's a really nice, easy read, and highly, highly recommend reading her books.
Lovely. I haven't read any of her books.
I haven't either, so there we go. To my list.
I'm learning something new this afternoon. I love it.
And then this one isn't, I wouldn't say it's a very well-known book. So Feel Good Club is actually an Instagram page that was started by two girls based in the UK, and they've created, I guess, again, I follow a lot of pages, but I guess they've created like this sort of well-being hub community page. They just, again, very similar to like Vex King. They send out like positive reminders and all of this, but it's been so much more. Their brand, they've really grown it. They've created like a hub where people can go and meet and have coffee and chat and talk about various different things. And then they wrote this book, and this is such a fab little book because it literally does sit in your handbag. And it has various different chapters within here. It has, again, little positive quotes and reminders. So the idea of this book, it's a little toolkit. So when you're feeling a bit down, open up a random page in this book, and it will have something in there
I like that
just helps you reframe your mind a little bit. And it's, like I said, it's really short little chapters, talks a bit about them and kind of their experiences and stuff. But for example, like this one's all about letting go of the bad stuff. It's all about finding your headspace, talking about your toxic relationships and letting go of unrealistic expectations and things like that. So, you know, it's a fab little book, and I take it everywhere with me.
That's really nice. Yeah. That's really nice. Thank you for that, Jen. That's really lovely. Thank you for sharing those with me. Thank you. So, okay, on to my book. So I'm going to be hitting the target of people that are not avid readers, because it sounds like you both are really into reading, which is great. But as I said earlier, actually sitting down with a book, I find almost physically painful, because the words are moving around. I reread the sentence over and over again. It moves around, and then I've got a concentration span of a gnat, and then I get distracted very easily. So actually reading a physical book for me is really difficult. I find almost painful. I've never really, apart from I think maybe the Harry Potter, I've never read like a storybook or anything like that ever once. If I read a book, it's got to be, for me, an informational book. I've got to have something from it, like a reference book. So it's interesting how everybody sees reading very differently. I was definitely that child in the classroom that didn't enjoy English and reading, and would never want to be reading anything out of a book. So I'm hitting that target of people. So audiobooks is a way for me, and so I've put, because I can't bring the physical audiobooks with me, I've popped them up on the screen today. So I'm going to start with Gabby Bernstein's The Universe Has Your Back. Now, that book was the very first audiobook that I listened to from the beginning to the end. It was at the time of my life, I would imagine, I think it was about 8 years ago, where, you have that time where just everything falls apart. Your relationship falls apart. You have got nowhere to live. You don't know what you're going to do for the rest of your life. It was a kind of at that moment, I was, I think, at my lowest of the low. And then I had a friend that had audiobooks on. It was not Spotify, it was Amazon. And she let me get into her account, and she said, "Oh, listen to a few books, Nettee, on here." So that's what I did, and that was the first one that I listened to. And for me, that book was a turning point for me, because I just kind of thought, oh my goodness, there's somebody else that has thought like me, or thinks like me, and has been through similar things to me. And the way she approached it, for me, it was a turning point, and that gave me the hunger to then listen to more and more books. I couldn't wait to listen to my next book. I was then searching for my next book. And because I suddenly thought, I'd never considered that I could listen to a whole book. To be fair, years ago, an audiobook was for older people that was losing their sight, and they were listen to an audio book. I just didn't think it was an option. So her book for me was a turning point towards just reading, and the knowledge that there are these books out there that I can access myself, that I can get hold of myself. So the second book, so my hero, Dr. Wayne Dyer, bless his cotton socks. So he's not only a massive hero for me, just because he's written 40 plus books.
Wow.
In his lifetime. So after Gabby, then I found his books, and I religiously listen. I've nearly listened to all of his books that he's
good going.
Yeah. It is my goal to listen to all of them. Now, this book I've put up there particularly because I actually have the physical book for that at home. I listened to the book over and over again, because this book is almost like an biography of his life. And what I like about him, because I respect him so much as an author, and because I want to be an author myself and I've written a book myself, he is my inspiration. In the fact that his turning points in this book, each point has a turning point where something happened, and there was that pivot point, and then that made him go in that direction, and that pivot point made him go in that direction. And I love that each chapter is those turning points, and I love the way he wrote it. And he's just an inspiration to me. So that book, actually, I took with me to the Hay House in London. I physically took it up, and Reed Tracy signed it for me. So that's I was a bit excited. So now I have that book at home with his signing in it. So I'm very happy about that. So the third book is Dr. Joe Dispenza. Now, another one that I've nearly got through all of his books. What I respect about him is he has come from science background. He is a neuroscientist originally. But what I like about him is, in this book particularly, like you were talking about your brain and about your thought patterns, it was this book that actually introduced me to that fact of I've got control over what I do and what I think. And I can change that. And he actually, what I like about him, because I like the nitty gritty of the science bit, and I like how it physically happens in the brain with the neurons, etc. I like to know how it's all happening. What I like about his book, he explains all of that in this book. And he explains, and it was this book particularly that I understood about how meditation, how that affects the brain and body, and how you can completely change your life. You can change your body. You can reverse illnesses. You can even, in this book, he has done research that you can change your own DNA. You can change everything within your body just through the power of your mind and through thinking. So his book, for me, because it was science-backed and based, but also then led into the research that he's doing through meditation and the retreats that he does and this research that he does. I respect him not only as a scientist and a doctor, but I also respect the fact that he is bringing, like we were saying in the previous episode, he is bringing these two worlds together. He's bringing the medical side and the woohoo side, as we call it. He's bringing it all together. And people like him, we need more people like him. And that's kind of because I've got my feet in both camps, as in I'm in a medical profession, but also I've got this, I'm also spiritual. I also understand, all of the practices that have been going for centuries and centuries. There's got to be something behind it. There's got to be. It's sad that we have to prove it with science for people to believe it. But now the science is kind of catching up with those things. And that's what it is very exciting for the future, I think, especially for the younger generation that are coming in and being scientists. There's actual programs now that are doing that kind of research. The younger people are doing that. So I find that really exciting. So those are my 3 books that I think not only respect the 3 of them because they're fantastic authors and very successful authors, but I also respect how they put things across and how they've married the 2 worlds together, which I find really fascinating. So that's my 3 books. So that is the wrap up of this episode, which is great. Thank you for bringing in your books. I really appreciate that. And it's been interesting because I've not one of these books have I listened to, so I will be going.
Same for me. It's been a nice expose on more books to buy.
We could have done a whole hour of this, like talking about all these different books.
Absolutely.
Go on Amazon later.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, thank you so much for that. I do appreciate it, and I look forward to speaking to you in the next episode.
Thanks.
Thank you.